Movie tropes are a common occurrence, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. See, a movie trope is a common or overused theme in movies. It's some of those things you see and have heard in other movies and TV shows too, and it's not until they're used over and over in like a very cheesy way that's when they turn into more of a cliche than a trope. These are the ones though that kind of stick out like a sore thumb. Every time you see them in the movies you watch, you're gonna notice and kind of feel that it's something you've seen before. There's a good reason for that. A lot of times these are just used for the sake of convenience and furthering a plot, furthering an emotion, or for the sake of character. And so no, they're not gonna be the most relatable thing in the world, but there is a level of convenience that is a good tool for a filmmaker in their story. Some of these I want to talk about here today are the ones that at least take me out of the movies I watch to the point where I'm kind of left feeling like, yeah, of course. Now, with all of that out of the way, and I am gonna put a little more pizzazz into this one, let's get into things you only see in the movies. That felt right. Alright, starting off, we're getting into anytime a character has a nightmare in a movie. I don't know about you, but I don't know how many times I have been pushed to the point of resurrecting straight into the camera lens and probably giving an audible gasp or even a scream from that horror. I've just never been spooked in that kind of way. Nothing has ever shook me to my core to that level. Usually when I'm getting a bad night's sleep from a nightmare, I'm waking up a little groggy. It's a lot less dramatic and a lot less interesting, which is probably why you don't see it as much. Now look, I'm grateful that I don't have those kind of nightmares that jolt me awake. But at the same time, I have seen this done just to tail end like a crazy scenario more than an actual nightmare itself. And that's where the trope really kicks in for me. That's where it just sticks out like a sore thumb, like I said before. Not a great thing. It's lazy. Just a bit of a lazy joke, really. All right, next up, it's when two people agree on a date without any details whatsoever. I just don't know how often it happens when you're communicating with somebody in such a way where even with the very lack of basic information that is needed for the date, you're somehow exactly on point with the time, location, and date to actually meet for said date. That's some next level chemistry that I would love to find one day. He says married, she watches these. Sorry, but really though, picture it. So I'll see you soon. All right, it's a date. Hey man, I just talked to her and yeah, seal the deal. We got ourselves a date.
Nice. All right, cool. What's the plan? Give me details.
Don't know, but I'll be there.
All right, so when?
Then? It's one that can be solved so easily with just a little more attention to the script or even just an off-the-cuff line from the actor in the moment. Very small thing and a very silly nitpick, but can also very easily be fixed. So worth mentioning. Next up, and admittedly, this one's a little more niche. It's gonna be geared towards the action and adventure kind of movies. It's when a side character gets into their backstory, they're probably gonna die. You can be in any battle, in any war, in any epic encounter. Bottom line is, if you tell me that you have someone waiting for you back home, and you're willing to even show a picture to us, the audience, or to our protagonist, I know you're going to die. You shouldn't have shown it. You shouldn't have said it. Now you're not gonna make it. And look, I get it. Filmmakers will do this because it's a good way to build in that reaction for when they do kill off these characters and we have some kind of attachment to them. It means more now because we've gotten emotionally invested in this character and so back home. But at the same time, now when I see a side character just kind of open up out of nowhere, I'm left thinking, is it in the second act? Probably the third act? Nah, it's gotta be the second act. Damn man, you're on your way, aren't you? That one for me does take me out because usually it just becomes a little more obvious. I know where this character is going, just waiting to see how. Next we have the convenience of any radio, television, screen, computer, phone, doesn't matter. It's always going to be perfect information for exactly what's going on in the story. Stop me if you haven't seen this one before. Quick, turn on the news. This just in, exactly what you needed to see is now what we are going to talk about in this exact moment on a 24-hour live show. Here's another breakdown that we must do literally every single minute of every single day. It's just always the most relevant information delivered in the most relevant way. And yes, Very convenient for the sake of storytelling, very convenient for the sake of exposition, but I still notice it. Lastly, and this one's really just for the editors out there, but it's when the music is supposed to tell us exactly how to feel, regardless of the writing or acting. If I see you looking out, and the music starts to get a little more louder, a little more intense, a couple more drums start kicking in, is that determination I'm seeing?
We are here. We are waiting.
Honorable mentions. Cannot help but notice whenever somebody drives up to where they need to be, there's always that exact spot open right in front of where they are for the perfect pan to set the location. And I always think it's hilarious because it takes me a couple of laps before I decide, I'm parking all the way to the back and I'm just gonna walk my ass to the front because it's probably quicker. Oh, and when talking about movie tropes, yeah, of course. These tropes are recognizable. That doesn't always mean a bad thing. And no, just because they bother me doesn't mean they bother you. And that's not even to say that just because they bother me, they ruin a movie. Really, if there's a moral to this video, it's that a movie trope isn't a bad thing. A trope is a trope, and sometimes that's dope. I don't know where I'm going with that. Look, they're recognizable to us for a reason. It's because they work for the moment and further everything along. It happens so many times and there's so many more. So go ahead and leave a comment down below. What are some ones that stick out to you? There's a ton of movie tropes out there. So many things that only happen on the big screen. I'd love to hear from you which ones I missed out on, and I'd love to hear from you how much they actually even bother you to begin with. It's okay if not at all. It's okay if completely. It's all subjective to begin with, remember that. So please do me a favor, like and subscribe because I do have more ideas coming out pretty soon. I'd love for you to be a part of it. Until then though, I will see you on the next one. Thanks again for letting me rant as always, and bye. We've all seen it before. Transition from a point to another point in a video. Transition from a scene to another scene in a movie. Even the act of sitting to standing is a transition. Transitions are a way of continuing a flow, be it in real life conversation or in any of the movies or TV shows you watch. Even right now, I'm using a simple cut and a sentence to transition from my studio to my backyard, thus changing from scene to scene with a continuous flow. Without a transitional sentence, it would just be a hard cut, and it would feel a little disjointed, a little off. You don't believe me? Well, what about this? But here today, I want to discuss with you some of the most commonly used transitions. Quite frankly, yes, all those cheesy transitions. He said it! He said it! The title of the video, I didn't think he was going to say it, but he said it. Wow. I want to give a quick shout out to a fantastic Reddit post that I found while researching for this video. Someone suggested that one of the best transitions in all of cinema history is when the movie The Last Airbender transitioned into the credits. Internet's full of facts. Instructions to build your IKEA furniture. Who won the 1860 presidential election? Dalmatians were originally hunting dogs. The Last Airbender movie was trash. Sorry, it's one of the few things in life that just kind of gives me like a physical reaction. I was a big Last Airbender fan of, for the animated show. So it's not pain, it's something worse. Aside, let's start addressing some of the most commonly used cheesy transitions. The wipe. This one you'll see in pretty much every single PowerPoint that is begging you to still be awake, but famously, it's also been used in every single Star Wars movie. Wasn't the first to do it, but definitely a reason why it's so recognizable. Out of date? Yeah, but it's got this little charm to it that, I don't know, maybe it doesn't completely make up for how out of date and cheesy it is, but it's definitely there. You'll also see them in pretty much any of your low budget local TV commercials, and I hate seeing them in pretty much all of those low budget local TV commercials. Actually, I might just hate it in everything except for Star Wars. The fade. The fade is probably one of the least cheesiest on this list, and honestly, it's one that I use pretty regularly, but because we all do, like almost everybody uses this. You typically know it as fade to black or fade to white. It can really be to any solid color, but fade to black and fade to white are what's commonly used, and you'll catch it almost everywhere now if you haven't been able to catch it already. What's good about the fade is that it works both ways. It's not just going to black, it can also come from black, and that's why like going from black fading into your scene is a great way to ease an audience into your movie, into your project, your show, your commercial, whatever. It's a slow way to get your audience in the mood. Sorry. Or it can be broken up into chapters, i.e. Pulp Fiction, constantly using it to go between segment to segment to segment across its like different little mini stories. Or it could be that traditional fade to black, which is just a good way to like bring something to a conclusion. It feels natural. It feels like you've gotten your closure from your story or your point. And as it fades to black, you hear the music and you know it's over. Not bad, right? Yeah. Bam! Hit by a car. A fade to white can be used for impact or entering some sort of dream state. You see the light, don't go towards the light. Getting hot in here. I'm thirsty. Is anyone else thirsty? The iris. The iris is an old transition that was actually used in place of a fade to black. It had kind of the same thing going on way back in the day, but the difference is that this one was actually able to both ease in or ease out of a scene while also drawing attention to something specific. The difference between the iris and the fade is that the iris got out of date a lot sooner. But since it can double duty as a fade and a zoom into something significant, it's a good way to tell your audience, hey, I switched out that camera for a cup for a reason and you're gonna notice it. Which I did because I'm thirsty, remember? It's come full circle. I've quenched my thirst and that plot point is resolved, and you notice the details I needed you to notice to tell that story. But speaking of transitions, yes, I'm adding the bat spin to a list of cheesy transitions because if you're gonna act like I'm not ever gonna have a chance to do this again with this level of context, this is it. It's the only time I'll ever get, so I'm taking my shot. The bat spin is iconic. It is so corny and so stupid. And honestly, it kind of goes back on that whole flow thing I mentioned earlier about what transitions are supposed to be. This is more of like a full plot point brick wall train stop. But it's a great way to go from somewhere to somewhere else in a very timely manner. Timely meaning instant. A good transition and a solid flow will stop you from actually being able to just like notice everything. You're just along for the ride until afterwards you can analyze it. But these cheesy ones that I've listed here are some that you'll notice right away. They stick out like a sore thumb. And so that's kind of part of the charm. That's kind of part of the fun in using these and in seeing these. They're bad. They're bad, but they're still kind of neat too, right? I know there's so many more out there, so leave some more down below that I missed here because there's plenty to go off of, and all of them have their own levels of cringe. We can all check them out together later in another video, so subscribe, like, again, leave those down below as suggestions for the next one, and I'll see you in the next video. Gadzooks, the battery's dying on the camera. Quick, to the end screen. Alright, so this is by no means a top tier kind of list. None of them really outweigh another just because of the order that I talk about them, so I just want to make that clear. It's not that kind of video. I showed this video last night with a couple of examples that come to my mind when I think of times the Oscars just completely got it wrong. You may disagree with me, you may absolutely agree with me, and honestly, either one's okay. Because again, it's all subjective to begin with. My take is no worse or better than yours. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into 5 times when the Oscars missed. But there might be more than 5, and they're not in any order. Number 1, The Social Network for Best Picture and Best Supporting Actor. 2 reasons. This is a twofer. There are 2 reasons why I think about this movie when it comes to recognition. And there's a good amount of the internet that I have heard proclaim this since 2010 getting into this. And it is the fact that The Social Network did not win Best Picture. This movie is arguably Aaron Sorkin's best script and arguably David Fincher's best movie, which is a lot to say when you look at those categories. There are some very strong contenders in both of those categories. So it just doesn't ever really sit right to me that this movie lost to The King's Speech in 2010, which is a good movie. I'm not gonna jump on that opinion that just because we wanted Social Network, The King's Speech must be a bad movie. No, it's a really good movie, but it's just not better than The Social Network. The Social Network was just better executed, it was better written, it was better performed, it was just a better film. And speaking of the performances, that year also rubbed me the wrong way when it came to Andrew Garfield. Huge L on the Oscars in for him not even getting nominated for The Social Network. I don't want to come off like I am bashing anybody in this video, I really don't. Especially when it comes to the likes of Christian Bale, who did win supporting actor that year. It's just when I watch The Fighter, which is what he won for, I just cannot really get on board with the idea that he is a supporting actor in that film. That is a two-person led film. But like, regardless of that logic too, I still believe, just ever so slightly, Andrew Garfield's performance was just a little stronger for me. It was just a little better. And I'm sorry, that's Christian freaking Bale. I understand that. But when I watch those two movies back to back, I still believe Andrew Garfield deserved a win in that category. Didn't even get nominated. Come on now. I'm gonna try not to get heated in this video, but I'm just letting you know right now, I think about these more than I should. Number 2, the Oscars missed Lost in Translation for Best Supporting Actress. She did not even get nominated. This is like the movie a lot of people considered the one that put her like kind of on everybody's radar. This was like the wide knowledge of Scarlett Johansson as far as a first impression goes. And again, I don't want to bash anybody, but I also know who I would replace her with in those 5 nominations. And I'm sorry, but it's Naomi Watts in 21 Grams. I know some people think it's a really strong performance, and more power to you. I'm happy that you got a lot out of that. But for me, I just feel like I've seen better of that specific performance, and I just don't think that it was as strong as maybe it had the potential to be. And that's just my opinion. But if you take Scarlett Johansson out of Lost in Translation, it takes away so much from the tone and the perspective of that film. So much is lost without Scarlett Johansson's performance in that movie. Yeah, her performance just had a bigger impact for me, so I'd swap that. She doesn't have to win. I don't think that she would have won, but not getting recognized, I think that was an L. Number 3, the Oscars definitely missed The Dark Knight for Best Picture. This is an example of a gray area. There's those that like comic book movies and those who don't consider it cinema, and then those right here in the middle. And The Dark Knight sits pretty comfortably right there. I'm not saying that it has to be anyone's favorite comic book movie, but it just cannot be denied the impact and how important that movie was when it came out. It redefined this genre. Very few comic book movies managed to execute their character, their story, their cinematography the way that The Dark Knight does. And I think it is imperative that Nolan is the one who made this movie, because I don't think it works without it. But I also, clearly and obviously, am going to mention Heath Ledger as Joker. That performance is just one that I feel like a lot of actors who even dismiss the comic book genre will still recognize as an incredible performance of a lifetime, which makes it all the more baffling that this movie did not get recognized for Best Picture. Not a nomination. You could even make an argument for a win. I personally wouldn't, but I do believe that a nomination is like absolutely robbed from this movie, regardless of how you feel about the comic book genre. Thing is, there was another little scandal with this movie, because after the audiences pushed as hard as they did, we opened the floodgates to more than 5 nominations a year for Best Picture. I think that's... wow. Really? And again, I'm not saying that Slumdog Millionaire didn't deserve to win that year. I personally, I do completely understand that win. It's just when you compare it to the likes of Benjamin Button, Frost, that Nixon movie, there are those movies that were nominated and recognized for that year. And then there's The Dark Knight, which is still used as a standard to this day. Should have been nominated. It changed the genre. It showed that in capable hands, the comic book genre can be more. That deserves recognition. Number 4, the Oscars missed Everything Everywhere All at Once for Best Supporting Actress. All right, now let's talk about something a little more recent. As recent as 2023. Okay, so I really don't want to bash other performances. I hope that so far I am navigating that line just better than I think I am. It's just hard to accept that Stephanie Hsu, who had 1, more screen time, but 2, did more with that screen time, a more powerful performance in the same movie as Jamie Lee Curtis, which makes it very easy to compare those performances by the time the credits roll. How do we not acknowledge that Stephanie Hsu was a better supporting actress than Jamie Lee Curtis? And maybe you can throw that same argument that I had mentioned earlier about The Fighter with Christian Bale. Maybe you can argue that Stephanie Hsu is a leading actor. I just don't know if there I even agree, because you look at how The Fighter followed Christian Bale's character and then how this movie followed Stephanie Hsu's character compared to like Michelle Yeoh's character. I don't know if it is a 2-person led film in that same way. Even if we're not gonna give it to Stephanie Hsu, how did we overlook Angela Bassett in Wakanda Forever? Regardless again of how you feel about the comic book genre, she took such a large amount of emotion that character needed for the loss of Chadwick Boseman, but in story for the loss of her son. And what Angela Bassett managed to do and kind of transcend both the character and the actor into her performance, it was gracefully done. It was impactfully done. It was beautifully done. I just don't see how you go Stephanie Hsu, Angela Bassett, Jamie Lee Curtis. That math doesn't add up to me. It felt like that could have just been more of a career in general lifetime award, and I don't know. And look, I really like Jamie Lee Curtis, all right? Her performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once was like really good, but I think she had an even stronger performance later the next year in The Bear Season 2, and if you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. And number 5, the Oscars missed Get Out for Best Picture and Best Director. We started this video with a twofer, we're gonna end it with a twofer. This movie lost to the fish movie. Yeah, that one. Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. Look, if you don't know, and you watching, you probably do, but if you don't, Guillermo del Toro is a revolutionary filmmaker. He is amazing. But when we're comparing The Shape of Water to Get Out, how did we miss this? How did they miss this? I don't understand that. Truthfully though, when I look at the nominations for that year, The Shape of Water isn't even in the top 3 for me. On top of that, Jordan Peele lost out Best Directing to Guillermo del Toro also, and I just don't understand that. It's crazy when you look at these decisions now in hindsight, years later, how awkwardly that has aged. Those decisions have aged so poorly. Get Out had more significance on like a cultural level, but even down to the filmmaking art, like what a weird L for the Academy to have made there. Now, there are seemingly an endless amount of perspectives that come into this, so I could go on forever when it comes to what is considered an Oscar miss. But for right now, that's all I got for you as of written last night. I'm looking to make more, hopefully with more time to reflect on in the history books and kind of gather some better examples, more examples up for you all. That was just very therapeutic. You're the best for hearing me out. And subscribe, like, and comment because there's more coming down the pipeline, and I will just see you on the next one. Thanks again for letting me rant. Bye. In the summer of 2009, 2 assistants at the New York Film Academy summer camp had gotten together and formed a duo that would go on to dominate the 2023 Academy Awards, including taking home gold for Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and the coveted Best Picture, with only their 2nd ever feature film. Look, not since the duo of PB and J has something worked so oddly and great together. This is The Daniels. Turned down for what? To Academy Gold. The reason why they're called the Daniels is because that's both of their first names. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Scheinert. I said I would be ready for this, and I thought I was. But they're the Daniels, or referred to as Daniels. It's neat, I really like it. Now, I won't get too into the weeds on their backstories, as interesting as they are. I just want to focus in on those 2 films that they made, but a brief history is due, so respectfully, Here we go. So while they met years prior in immersion college, it wasn't until that summer camp that they formed their professional duo, after getting a Canon 5D Mark II camera, which is actually the older revolutionizing brother of this guy right here, the Canon 5D Mark IV camera. And what made it revolutionary was this concept of videography coming into a affordable, smaller, cheaper, consumer level product. Small package, but big possibilities. Sorry. One night while walking back to Daniel Kwan's apartment, they noticed a playground with some interesting lighting. They got jealous of everybody else creating at that summer camp, and so they decided to really test out that new camera, and the product was a 55-second short called Swingers. They uploaded it to Vimeo, and when it ended up on their staff pics page, they considered it internet approved and decided to make more. Those shorts would lead them into the realm of music videos, and then that slowly picked up more steam until they got more hired jobs for projects with bigger and bigger budgets, until eventually they landed on a little project called Turn Down for What?
Turn down for what?
That's right, this gem of a music video was made by future Academy Award winners, and I promise you, I genuinely enjoyed this video long before they had anything to do with filmmaking. The Rolling Stones at the time had said that this movie was perfect insanity, and I think they were onto something. One, obviously for the video, but two, maybe just for their body of work as a whole. And speaking of the body of work, that leads us into the next portion of this video. I have the absolute genuine pleasure of talking about a movie that means so much to me personally. This is a movie that I saw early in my journey and kind of helped shape my love for the art of filmmaking as a whole. Let's just get into it. We're talking about Swiss Army Man.
So this is the life I've forgotten.
This is just the beginning.
Dance had gotten together and done a producer's tour. They kept pitching and pitching and pitching, and the idea was mostly of jokes that they would form into movies and concepts, stuff that they wanted to make, not so much the stuff that producers were pushing onto them. Until eventually they landed on a producer who actually took them up on it and said, "Why don't you write that?" And so they got to work writing on the script built around a fart joke. They had their baseline, but now they needed to do something more. They needed to write around that joke and elevate it to make it more genuine, something with emotion. With the movie wrapped and a premiere at Sundance Film Festival, that's when something truly unique happened. The walkout. Before the movie could even finish, people were walking out, with some even being reported leaving 15 minutes into the movie. There were even some people who were going out on record to say that this movie was like a disgrace and a mockery to filmmaking. But those who stayed for the credits actually ended up applauding it, and the next day wrote reviews saying that it was about the meaning of life itself. I need to emphasize this. People left and said that this movie was a disgrace to filmmaking. Those who stayed applauded it and said that it's about the meaning of life. I fucking love filmmaking. Like, regardless if you agree or disagree with either take, at the end of the day, responses this strong and something so beautiful and uncomfortable to people like that, this film is more art than most other movies.
We started talking about it and coming up with this kind of like amnesiac corpse that needs to be reminded what home is like, and then this lonely man who's forced to kind of recreate home and remind the corpse and himself like what's nice about life, and that started feeling kind of lonely and funny and beautiful and like needy, you know, and it was that relationship that kind of like reminding a corpse what life is like in order to unlock, you know, survival skills and to not die, that life or death nostalgia kind of story. That was when we were like, that's the real story of Swiss Army Man. We kind of been pitching it as a suicidal man must convince a corpse that life is worth living.
And my take personally is I do believe that this movie addresses the themes of life, addresses the themes of what is love, addresses the themes of what makes us uncomfortable, addresses the themes of what makes everything worthwhile, even down to the smallest details that together build something that's beautiful because we live it and experience it and we get to do that. I'm just saying that this kind of movie doesn't get made often. They just threw so much into the script that it somehow means nothing and everything all at the same time. You could even say everything all at once. But really though, you get 10 different people to watch this movie and you're gonna end up with 10 different takes. That's just the kind of movie that this is. This was one of those handful of movies that just really stuck with me even after I left the theater. And it was to the point where like this movie made me feel so much that I feel like it helped contribute to my push towards the art of filmmaking. Yeah, I can go on and on about my personal reflection onto this movie, but that might spill into me just talking about the movies that shaped me as a whole, and I might just save that for a future video. Let's just get all this and put it aside for now, and we're gonna push that box just for later. We'll push it for later, and we'll move on and switch gears. Swiss Army Man garnered attention and praise over time because of the backlash that it received initially and because it being mostly an unknown, out of nowhere kind of movie. But this next film, their second film, garnered attention and success immediately. We're talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
To this moment. Don't let anything distract you from it.
Yes, Everything Everywhere All at Once, your new favorite multiverse movie. I'm kidding, of course, it's obviously still one of these gems. This movie became A24's highest grossing box office movie ever, with a whopping $143 million on a budget of like $25 million total. Yeah, from a business end, that's a success. But artistically, it would go on to be successful by dominating just about every conversation that led into this past year's 2023 Academy Awards. With a real-life comeback story for Ki Hugh Kwan, an overdue highlight on Michelle Yeoh to American audiences, and even an important win for Jamie Lee Curtis. And regardless of how I feel about that win, check my Oscars missed video for more on that. It still just makes up the overall greatness that was this movie and this past year's Academy Awards. I truly believe, and it's not just recency bias, that this past year's 2023 Academy Awards were important and beautiful and told so many real-life stories that to me transcended my interest past the movies they were involved in. Even down to the Daniels themselves, going from a music video winning the MTV Music Awards, and then going on to win Best Picture and Best Director. And this was in a year where competition was pretty steep. Yes, Best Picture was almost guaranteed for this movie across the board on most major outlets. But Best Director was still a little closer because they were up against Steven freaking Spielberg, directing a movie that was loosely based on how he got into filmmaking to begin with. That is a beloved industry leader, and the story was amazing and personal to him and the industry as a whole. Yeah, no, that competition was really close, but they managed to still take home the gold for it. As someone who followed their career for so long, granted, not a lot of major projects to follow, but still, seeing them go from walkouts, seeing them go from a funny, silly music video, right, to making one of like the most interesting and emotional movies and then win the Academy Award for that risk, for such a grand epic that they decided to make out of Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was so gratifying. That was so rewarding to watch. But yeah, they managed to make a multiverse movie at a time where that trend is kind of hopping into all of our movies and TV shows. I can't seem to get away from these kind of projects that keep popping up. Everything just has to be about the multiverse, and like, I get it. It's fun and exciting at first, but I'm kind of at a point where I'm getting a little over it. But they managed to take the multiverse concept, play with its chaos, really get some crazy imagery out of it, and then ground it in its relationships with its characters. This movie is a story about a wife and her husband. This story is about a mother and her daughter. This story is about the meaning of meaning. And I do believe that their execution of something like this absolutely deserved that Best Director spot for them. And this movie absolutely deserved Best Picture.
Daniels, I don't know what to say. I love you guys. You just won Best Picture.
So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. My final thoughts are the Daniels are two artists that took a hell of a journey. They're filmmakers that take risk, and I'm just so grateful that someone took a risk on them and decided to let them make what they wanted to make and how they wanted to make it. The amount of effort and time that they take into their movies and their scripts, the idea of taking such a simple trend or such a simple joke and expanding them into this emotional epic, this profound experience, this uncomfortable and divisive set of work. Yeah, no, they're artists. And yes, I'm grateful that someone took a chance on them, but I'm also grateful that you liked and subscribed to my content. Sorry.
Numbers aren't important.
Okay, well, they are. They most definitely are. But they shouldn't be the measure of artistic success or artistic expression. However, when looking at filmmaking, there is what the art is capable of doing, and then there's that sweet, sexy, lucrative box office money, baby. Okay. Look, I'm not saying that just because a movie makes a lot of money, that means that you have to like it or even appreciate it, because if that were the case, we'd see a lot more references every day to these moving pictures. No. What I want to focus on here is this idea, this beautiful tradition of success complementing success, holding each other up high, and just appreciating this art of filmmaking as a whole. Isn't that just nice to say? Without jumping any further, I gotta introduce this properly. Let's get into a wonderful tradition from wonderful filmmakers. Might not be any way to chapter out this video. There would be a lot to keep up with, so let's get a timeline going, so we can keep track of the box office kings. Nice. See, going all the way back to 1977, Steven Spielberg's Jaws was considered the first ever blockbuster and was dominating a 2-year-strong box office record until a friend of his by the name of George Lucas dropped a little movie that would go on to run away with the blockbuster title, that movie being Star Wars. So Spielberg took out a page in Variety to congratulate his friend and fellow leading filmmaker on the successful title of Box Office King. In the ad, we see R2D Boop-Bop fishing and hooking the jaws of Jaws. Sorry, I couldn't resist how fun that sentence could be. Dear George, last week Star Wars moved ahead of Jaws in domestic film rentals. Your hyperspace performance package really did the trick. Congratulations to the Cantina crowd and all the forces of your imagination that made Star Wars so worthy of the theme. Throne. I was doing so well. Congratulations to the Cantina crowd and all the forces of your imagination that made Star Wars so worthy of the throne. Wear it well, your pal Steven Spielberg. And thus, a new tradition celebrating filmmaking success was born. Complementing each other as fellow filmmakers first rather than just competitors. Overall healthy for the craft, so I like it. In 1982, another ad was taken out by George Lucas to return the gesture to Spielberg by commemorating and celebrating the new box office king, E.T. Dear Steven, congratulations to you and your extraterrestrial buddy. This week, E.T. moved ahead of Star Wars to take the first place in domestic film rentals. E.T.'s adventure on Earth and his gift of intergalactic friendship continue to touch us all. May the Force always be with you, your pal, George Lucas. You see where this video is going, right? It's nothing major, but I think it's worth talking about. I really like this stuff. Steven Spielberg would go on to beat and take his own throne in 1993 with the release of Jurassic Park, beating out E.T. in the box office. Check the timeline. But George Lucas would go on to regain that throne once he re-released Star Wars in theaters. See, he released the whole original trilogy back into theaters under the name of the special editions, releasing one every single month, January, February, and ending in March. Which is cheating, right? Like that's cheating, right? Yeah? There's nobody there. But you and I know, we know that's cheating, right? Well, to be fair, George Lucas wanted to take advantage of the modern day technology of the 90s and kind of tell the story that he had wanted to tell in a better way back in the, late 70s. With this also, he was able to take the opportunity to introduce Star Wars to people who weren't around to celebrate the Star Wars trilogy when it first came out. And I'm sure the studio wanted to make some more money by earning an additional $138 million, and that added to the original release's box office of A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie. That's what pushed it past E.T. and Jurassic Park to win back the box office king title, and also the prequels. He knew that he was going to make the prequels, he knew that A Phantom Menace was just around the corner to start it all off, reintroduce Star Wars and get people familiar and refresh their minds a bit so they're ready for The Phantom Menace. If only he could have taken some of that time to make The Phantom Menace good. So with the special edition victory, Spielberg revived the tradition by taking out an ad in Variety to congratulate George on taking the box office title from Jurassic Park and E.T. Dear George, congratulations for renewing the most enduring motion picture in cinema history. Your pal, Steven. But this wouldn't last. See, up until now, this has been a back and forth match between only two, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. But a new challenger would approach by the end of the year. James Cameron would step onto the scene with his film Titanic and claim the box office title dominantly in December of 1997. Being the first movie to make $1 billion at the box office. What is this? That can't be. This is $1 billion. $1 billion. Jesus Christ. Alright, yep, that's a B, that's a billion. So, George Lucas took out an ad to commemorate James Cameron and bring him into the fold of the successful box office king tradition. With an ad that's a little morbid, considering this is based on real events, but makes for a cute poster. Oh, it's a cute poster. Jim. Congratulations, George. And in impressive fashion, James Cameron would kind of pull a Spielberg and beat his own record by releasing Avatar in 2009, toppling over Titanic as the box office king and becoming the new highest grossing movie of all time. Let's see that timeline. So this is gonna be a bit of a parallels journey from here on out. You see, in the early 2000s, going in with a new idea of what a blockbuster is and kind of seeing the trends of film change a little bit to be a lot more geared towards these newer, higher budgeted films and franchises. Box office opening weekend became very important, to the point where even studios started to participate in this tradition over just the opening weekend alone. So here we are. The one to hold top shot was definitely Marvel Studios' The Avengers, earning over $200 million in just its opening weekend domestically. And that record would go on to be broken by Universal Studios' movie Jurassic World. So, head of Marvel Studios Kevin Feige would go on to make a congratulatory letter towards Universal Studios, reading, Marvel Studios congratulates Jurassic World on being the new opening weekend king. Alright, let's check that timeline. And then again, the opening weekend crown would be taken by another movie, The Force Awakens, also Disney owned. So in 2015, Universal Studios would go on to write a letter to Lucasfilm Disney. Universal Pictures, Steve, Frank, and Colin congratulate Star Wars The Force Awakens on the biggest opening weekend in galactic history. Then in 2018, we had Disney-owned Lucasfilm lose out to Disney-owned Marvel Studios, which, man, that's kind of sad. But Avengers Infinity War took the top spot in its opening weekend, and I love that movie. Head of Lucasfilm Kathleen Kennedy would go on to write a note to Kevin Feige stating, from a galaxy far, far away to Earth's mightiest heroes, congratulations on the biggest opening weekend in history. From Kathy and everyone at Lucasfilm. With both studios at Disney, she just presumably had to run this down the hall, I don't know. However, all of this was just a sign of something even bigger on the way. See, the next installment after Avengers Infinity War was Avengers Endgame, and it did what was considered a long shot. It beat Titanic in the box office, and going even further, it went on to beat Avatar and become the new highest grossing movie of all time. Update timeline. And so in 2019, James Cameron wrote these two beautiful pieces of art and sent them Marvel's way. The first reading, to Kevin and everyone at Marvel, an iceberg sank the real Titanic. It took the Avengers to sink my Titanic. Everyone here at Lightstorm Entertainment salutes your amazing achievement. You've shown that the movie industry is not only alive and well, it's bigger than ever. Jim Cameron. Which, honestly, love to see that. Especially when you get into the whole divisiveness of what comic book movies are to film. This is cool. And then, even larger in success, we get, I see you, Marvel. Congratulations to Avengers Endgame on becoming the new box office king, Jim Cameron. And in a way that puts kind of a lame finish to this video, Avatar was re-released in theaters, and that would go on to add up to the total and pass Avengers Endgame. And so instead of another beautiful poster letter ad, we instead just got this tweet. We got this thing from Kevin Feige, and it's kind of a bummer that I have to end it here. Now who knows? Maybe one day something will beat Avatar at the box office definitively, but I'm telling you right now, whatever it is, it's a long shot. Like my final thoughts are blockbusters come and go, but some movies manage to kind of maintain a stronghold in pop culture for decades after they've been released. I see these as a way to celebrate these momentous achievements in filmmaking history. And so, as it stands, here are the top 5 movies at the box office to date. And as it stands, I've just gained 1 new subscriber from you, because that's something we've both agreed on doing, right? Let me know down below what you think of this tradition. Thank you so much for hearing me out, and I will see you on the next one. Bye. Line. Yeah, I know we just started. Line. What? Yeah, I'm not saying that. When it comes to making magic on the big screen, it's sometimes the moments that weren't written down that end up in the film's final cut. Maybe it was intentional by bringing on someone who you knew was going to be able to improvise, or it could have just been one of those magical moments that happen on camera. And the neighbors mowing the yard. Regardless of what led to it, an opportunity presented itself, so here are some times where actors took matters into their own hands. Starting off, we have Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained. When Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Calvin Candy, is in the middle of handling a deal that he believes is now a lie, he's meant to play into this anger and kind of play up the tension in the room, because now it's a full-on confrontation.
Hey! Don't lay your palm flat on that tabletop! If you lift those palms off that turtle shell tabletop, Mr. Pooch is gonna let loose with both barrels of that sawed off.
Problem is, Leo got so carried away that he actually managed to smash and break glass right onto his hand. It was the only glass thing he could have possibly hit, managed to hit it right on the table, and in doing so, cut open his hand in the process. Being the professional that he is, he managed to use this for his performance and just continue going like as if nothing had happened. So you can actually see some of the other actors being caught off guard, but they're also rolling with it because the cameras are on and the performance is being done. He even went as far as to start smearing some of the blood on Kerry Washington's face while being swept up in this rage. It seemed like something he probably would do. It was just very disgusting to see, and Kerry Washington deserved an Oscar just for going along with that as it is. It said that when the take was done, the cast and crew behind the camera all managed to give an ovation to Leonardo DiCaprio for captivating everybody in the room with the performance on screen and off screen. It's an impressive performance to watch, but man, I would be pissed if that was me. Nope. Next, we have Mike Myers picking up the torch and creating a legend with Shrek. See, originally DreamWorks had another funny man in mind for the voice of Shrek, someone who hit a surge of popularity from his role on Saturday Night Live and a successful run on the big screen. Yeah, none other than the comedic great Chris Farley was originally supposed to be the voice of Shrek. They actually went as far as to record just about all of his lines until he tragically would go on to pass. You can actually find these clips on YouTube of Chris Farley's voice for Shrek.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Why do you want to talk about it?
Why are you answering the question with a question?
Why are you asking questions I don't want to answer?
Why are you blocking?
I'm not blocking.
Then why do you have problems expressing your wants?
I don't. I want you to shut up.
So, in a position with no real right answers, they made the choice to move ahead with the project, just recasting Shrek. So they turned back to Saturday Night Live and picked up one Mike Myers. You're looking for comedic gold in a hurry, that's a pretty good safety net to get. Though the recording process was a little messy for Myers. He requested to re-record all of his lines to better shape the character. And now we have that beautiful, nostalgic Scottish accent that arguably is part of Shrek's big charm to begin with.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Why do you want to talk about it?
Why are you blocking?
I'm not blocking.
Oh, yes, you are.
Donkey, I'm warning you.
Who are you trying to keep out? Just tell me that, Shrek. Who?
Everyone, okay?
Now on to Madeline Kahn and Clue. Clue is a fun movie with a fun gimmick of having a bunch of false endings scattered around depending on which version you saw. In one of these endings, Mrs. White has a speech, more so a weird rant. And in this hilarious stretch of just random thoughts, she managed to confuse and somehow entertain everybody. And that's true. The reactions that are then recorded of the other main characters on set are the genuine reactions of the actors playing off of what's going on. Nobody understood what she was talking about or where she was going, but they definitely didn't want to interrupt. They were just letting the stream flow. It managed to show Mrs. White in this hidden, unhinged kind of way, and it just made for something truly special for an ending. It's been quoted and memed a lot on the internet, and the confused and hateful nature of it is just something that I think can only happen in the moment. It can't be replicated by force.
I hated her so much. Flames on the side of my face, breathing. Heaving breaths.
Alright, speaking of confusion, let's talk about Matthew McConaughey and The Wolf of Wall Street. In a moment where his character is meant to provide some wisdom or some motivation to the newbie in this hungry Wall Street world, McConaughey begins to thump his chest in a weird rhythm, and that turns into a chant. What makes this great is nobody knew he was going to do that. That's actually just something McConaughey does before performing most of his stuff that he's ever done on screen, because it kind of just helps clear his mind so he can just focus in on the role at hand. Leo was definitely confused and caught off guard, and you can actually see him look around at the other cast and crew members just off camera.
The parade comes to town. Going down Broadway is a one-way street, whichever way I go.
Okay, I love this next one. Let's talk about Jim Carrey and The Grinch. Now, when talking about some of the great comedic actors of all time, Moments of Improvising isn't really going to be anything breaking any headlines. They're pretty known for doing this. But Jim Carrey has a scene in The Grinch that really encapsulates the whole lightning in a bottle kind of moments. He's meant to rip off a tablecloth and make a huge mess in the process. Problem is, he managed to perform the exact magic trick where you rip a tablecloth and nothing moves. And so hilariously turned around and just knocked everything down in this like really funny way. Yeah, a great moment to happen while the camera was rolling. Kind of insane that actually was caught. Moving on, we have Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka. In the Chocolate Factory documentary, Pure Imagination, we learned that Gene Wilder actually demanded that he get to introduce Wonka in his way, as untrustworthy and hard to read. So when he first walks out in this big introduction, this grand moment, he's walking with a cane and struggling, somersaults his way down, up, and then seems totally fine. In fact, he actually has a grin on his face. From then on, we as the audience are not meant to know when he's actually telling the truth. Now, this seems like a small thing, but it really does add a lot to the tone of this character, and honestly, it's part of the reason why some people look back on Willy Wonka and get a little creeped out. Some people look back on Willy Wonka and just think it's a happy movie. Yeah, what a great call for an actor to push for, and just really happy that he did it. I'd like to think I do the same thing, but truth be told, I'm probably gonna roll a couple more times and I might not really spring up at all. And I'd like to close this video out with Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting. In a scene where we get more of a heart-to-heart between Robin Williams and Matt Damon's characters, the two leads are sharing a moment where Robin Williams, in character of Sean Maguire, starts sharing a memory of his wife farting in her sleep. And it manages to catch Matt Damon so off guard that he not only genuinely smiles, but he begins genuinely laughing. In fact, the whole room was caught off guard, and the whole room was laughing with this really funny way that Robin Williams can tell a story. You can actually even see the camera shaking because the guy controlling it was also laughing. It's amazing that made it into the movie. It's amazing what he's able to do on set. Robin Williams was just a class act, and every movie just benefited that much more from having him in it. Plus, it really added a lot to the dynamic of those two leads.
My wife used to fart when she was nervous. She had all sorts of wonderful little idiosyncrasies. You know, she used to fart in her sleep. I'm sorry I shared that with you. One night it was so loud it woke the dog up. But Will, she's been dead 2 years, and that's the shit I remember. It's wonderful stuff, you know? Little things like that. Yeah, but those are the things I miss the most.
And And that's all I got for you on this one. There are just so many moments, too many moments to count, that we could have talked about where actors improvised and something happened that wasn't really written down, but ended up on the big screen. So go ahead and comment down below some of the ones that stood out to you, some that you remember that you think fondly of, or maybe just some that you think most people don't really talk enough about. I'd love to check those out. Sometimes it's some of the best moments that weren't written down, and maybe sometimes you even want to talk about some of the worst moments that weren't written down that maybe they should have just stuck with the script. Kind of like how I should be sticking with the script right now and just ending this video already, but instead I'm rambling. Now it sounds small, but it would mean a lot if you liked this video and shared it around. Subscribe for more movie discussion videos and some life updates along the way. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for your time, and bye. When it comes to the best lines in cinema history, there's a seemingly endless amount for that list. From
roads, where we're going, we don't need roads.
To even
you're gonna need a bigger boat.
And so many more, my God. But in this one, I wanna go ahead and highlight some of the ones that stick out to me, at least at the time of writing this video. A line that can just make me resonate with an emotion, or even just highlight a character with a few simple words. Maybe make a genuine difference to an entire story, or, you know, just make for one hell of a moment. Here are just some of the best lines in cinema history, dialogue that f***ing crushes it. Starting off, we have a banger quote from the Grand Budapest Hotel. See, we have Mr. Gustav, who is the head of the once prestigious Grand Budapest Hotel, who is on a train with his new lobby boy, Zero. The train is being stopped by unspecified soldiers of an unspecified war. After getting roughed up a bit by the soldiers, a higher commanding officer then recognizes and comes to understand who Mr. Gustav is, and go ahead and just lets him go. Lets him carry on by and continue through like nothing happened. See, the thing is, throughout the whole movie, Mr. Gustav is just someone who kind of appreciates the higher class of society, just not necessarily the people, but in general what high class means. He's very full of gracious and high-minded level thinking, and at least he likes to believe so. He'll often spend most of the movie quoting literature or coming to terms with something that's going on around him, and then using that as like an example of like the high class, or I guess the high-minded way of society that is just lost on the world today of savages and brutalists. He appreciates the nicer things that society has to offer and won't really settle for anything less, holding himself and the hotel to the highest of standard. So then after getting roughed up by these soldiers, he then tries to use this opportunity to just spin it into this tale for young Zero here to take in this new high-minded meditation, but then he just kind of hits a wall in his words and decides, that f***ing sucked, huh?
You see, there are still faint glimmers of civilization left in this barbaric slaughterhouse that was once known as humanity. Indeed, that's what we provide in our own modest, humble, insignificant... fuck it.
I love this moment because it's a small peek behind the curtain into Mr. Gustav as a character. It also kind of acts as a good way to show just how misplaced Mr. Gustav actually is with the surrounding world aside from himself and the Grand Budapest. They actually do play off this quote pretty well later in the movie, but I actually think it's something that follows that scene that really complements this moment even better.
To be frank, I think his world had vanished long before he ever entered it. But I will say, he certainly sustained the illusion with a marvelous grace.
Next up, a quote they needed for the trailers in the movie Fury.
Why are you showing me this?
Ideals are peaceful. History is violent.
Now, regardless of the argument of if this is a quote that was made specifically for the trailers or not, that jokes aside, right? This quote still stands out, and it is a very well-written piece of dialogue. Now, there's just a lot of weight into a quote like this, especially within a movie like Fury, but also in general, a quote like this just speaking onto just the varying and widely different reasons that armies in history have all fought and died for, again, being radically different. But when I heard this line, I just knew how much it was actually trying to say. You gotta keep in mind, Fury is a movie about 5 soldiers who are just forced into this giant metal box and sent off. They are all a direct product of their environment being war. This movie shows us the different sides of war, the optimistic and very much the ugly, even down to the idea of what surviving actually means to each individual. We have Logan Lerman's character, Norman, who is fighting the very idea of ruthless aggression, and with Brad Pitt's character, War Daddy, who is fighting the very idea that this war will break him. In contrast to a character like, I don't know, John Berthol's Grady, who is very much the exact product of all of this tension and shared tragic experiences. He is basically become nothing but ruthless and aggression as an individual. But the fact is they all experience this amount of tension and this amount of tragedy and this amount of effort and this amount of fight and this amount of survival together, regardless of all of their individual beliefs and regardless of all of their individual ways of trying to make this through. They are sharing every single bit of this. So with Norman basically being the audience's character, we learn everything through him and we learn everything with him, and we kind of go along with him for the entirety of this experience, even down to the end. This kind of line really does show how and why this war does start to shift him into a very different person. Sorry, I got a lot to say about Fury. I just really love this movie. I do actually have a separate movie discussion video about it that you can check out after this. But yeah, that line just kind of sums up most of what the discussion from this movie and what it has to offer to a discussion, all in one line. Now, when talking about lines that can kind of sum up the entirety of the theme or message of a movie, I gotta take it to my earliest example of this, earliest I can remember watching, The Lion King.
I know what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
This one hits hard for me, as I'm sure most of you watching can resonate with it at one point or another. When looking at the story of Simba, he is carrying the weight of a Shakespearean tragedy. And when embracing the life of Hakuna Matata, this idea of just not having to worry about any of your problems or past, just live this carefree lifestyle, he is met with this conversation, and I don't know, it shows that healing isn't just looking at your past problems and mistakes as a way of going backwards. It's taking your past problems and mistakes, taking lessons from those problems and mistakes, and realizing how much more forward it can actually push you. This one, though surface level as it might be, it is one that just plays over and over in my head even today as an adult. And it's just one of those things where if it can do that so many decades later after watching it and continue to just resonate this thought of growth and healing, yeah, that shows just how powerful this piece of dialogue actually is. Absolutely deserves to get recognized in this video. Now, like Fury, I'm gonna go ahead and serve up a quote from one of my favorite movies of all time, but unlike Fury, I don't really have a movie discussion video of it yet. A neo-Western movie of two brothers played impressively by Chris Pine and Ben Foster. We have Ben Foster's character Tanner, who is recently released from prison and is on a bank heist spree, just one after another, specifically for a specific goal that I'm not going to spoil here. But Tanner is more of a wild card. Unlike his brother Toby, he's not nearly as focused, and if anything, he has more aggression to him. He clearly has been hurt, and he seemingly has no problem with hurting others. He just always seems to kind of want to push things even further than they already are. In a scene at a card table, he offends a man of Comanche descent, and things get pretty tense pretty quick. But in the exchange, we get this chilling revelation about how Tanner sees himself and the life he has lived thus far.
Do you know what Comanche means? It means enemies forever.
Enemies with who?
Everyone.
You know what that makes me?
An enemy.
No. It makes me a Comanche.
I really do get chills from this one just because of the delivery is fantastic, but also it really does just add so much to this character every time I rewatch this movie. Really, it kind of even highlights what's going on with multiple characters throughout this movie. It's perspective, it's experience, it's thought-provoking, it's just a hell of a piece of dialogue that just really adds so much to the movie. But before we continue, I wanted to go ahead and thank a potential sponsor of this video, movie theaters. Whether you're looking for the shared experience of an opening weekend crowd, or a time-honored tradition of awkwardly bumping hands into the popcorn bucket of the person next to you, Hopefully it's someone you know. Movie theaters offer so much to both filmmaking and the power of viewing and absorbing what the art and craft of filmmaking has to offer to an audience. So go on out and see a movie in theaters. When you go to the checkout line for popcorn and a drink, use the verbal code Eddie sent me, and the guy will probably tell you, okay. Next up, we'll turn to Gladiator, in which we finally get Maximus and Commodus together again. After a long journey of coming back from tragedy, I really don't want to spoil the movie here to any of the three of you that haven't seen Gladiator yet, but this moment is entirely made because of the performance that Russell Crowe gives delivering the speech, and the performance that Joaquin Phoenix gives receiving the speech.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
It's incredibly satisfying to watch a revenge film as an audience member, because then when you finally do get that payoff, it's so well earned and so rewarded if done right. It's just so nice to finally see the character get the job done in a situation where it didn't really matter what was going to follow, what was going to happen next. It was just a matter of getting vengeance right then and there. Yeah, this speech was just power and control over the entire situation, and it led to a pretty badass moment as it is. Now listen, I had like an overload of these, alright? Like just way too many to really narrow down and just figure out where to even start with writing one of these. But yeah, narrowing it down. I did my best to keep my thoughts concise and cut it off somewhere before this whole project got way bigger than I intended. I even somehow managed to avoid doing anything from Tarantino and Sorkin, who are just full of gold when it comes to quotes, so that's fun. But that being said, leave a comment down below. What are some that stood out to you? Some that I referenced in this video, and of course, the endless well of movie quotes from all of cinema history. I would really like to dive in and kind of just see, and I don't know, I love these kind of videos where I can just kind of get that kind of conversation back and forth with y'all, so please feel free. Go ahead and like this video, share it around if you can. The YouTube things, they really do matter, so I see in my analytics that a lot of you guys who watch my videos aren't subscribed. If you can go ahead and subscribe for me, that would go a long way. Be along for the ride for the next one. And until then, bye.